Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to week 4. So for this week, we are going to continue with the foreign exchange market topic. So this is chapter 5. Is it chapter 5? Yeah, this is chapter 5 in your textbook. And in the second part of this topic, we are going to focus on the forward market. Okay. Now, before we start, is there any questions about the quiz this Friday? Are we all clear?
Are the questions going to be asked from all the sessions that were covered till now? Or there is any particular session the questions might be asked from?
So the question will be on everything related to the spot foreign exchange market. Yeah. Okay. So that will be a multiple choice test. Okay. So there will be 15 questions for 35 minutes. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes.
But we got a mail yesterday saying that the question will be asked from week 3, part 1 of the market for foreign exchange.
Yeah, so the questions will be from week 3 material. So that will be on the spot foreign exchange market.
Week 3 and part 1, right? I just wanted to confirm. So.
Week 3 is part 1, yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, ma'am. So would the questions be similar to what we did in class, and to the revision questions which we had?
Yes, I would say similar content, yes. So it will be multiple choice. Yeah, so it will be similar to the type of questions you see in the revision quiz.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just a quick question. We're gonna have numerical questions as MCQs, right?
Yeah, so there will be numerical and theory in the MCQ, yes.
Okay. So will you be able to point out how many questions we will have numericals and how many theoretical?
I can't tell you that, but I can say that there will be more calculation than theory.
Okay. Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So what do I want to say? So with the assignment, I've got the case here and I can quickly show you what the case looked like. So as I mentioned before, it will be on Afterpay. So by the way, there will be 2 versions of the question. Here's my, here we go. So there'll be 2 versions of the assignment, but they are all based on the same company, which is Afterpay. So basically, you're going to be looking at the foreign exchange rate risk exposure of this company. So if you look at their recent announcement on ASX, you will see that they have recently expanded into the US and the UK market. And your job is to look at how foreign exchange rate risk exposure could affect their income. Okay, so we'll talk about foreign exchange rate risk management a little bit later on in week 7 and 8. But just as an overview, so this is what you're required to do in your assignment. Okay. So you're asked to focus on one segment of the company. So for this version, it would be the US segment. Okay. Then using historical data, you need to do some forecasting of the exchange rate in the next 6 months. And you need to conduct a sensitivity analysis on the firm's net profit. Okay. Now, in the next part, you're given a few different ways to hedge exchange rate risk using either forward contracts or option contracts. Okay. And you need to analyze how these hedging strategies might influence the firm's profitability. Okay. So that's basically it. So the case study is going to be on exchange rate risk management. Okay. And the time horizon we're looking at is over the next 6 months. Okay. I've got to change the date a little bit, sorry. So this should be August or something like that. Okay. So I'll have to think about the mark allocation, and then once I've done that, I'll upload the case on LMS for you. Okay. Any questions so far with the assignment?
Hi, Dan.
Yes.
I would like to know, like, will you explain it in the further class, like how to do what? Because, right, like once we see this, it looks very like we don't even know what topics are we going to touch in this.
Yeah, so as I said, you will talk about, we'll talk about exchange rate risk management in week 7 and 8. So at the moment, just look at the case, look at the company, and understand their business model, okay? So that's all that you need to do for now. So once you've got the case, just read through the questions. And then when we go to week 7 and 8, I think you have a better idea.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So yeah, that is it for the assignment. Oopsie, I think I turned off the sharing. Now, if there's no more question, let me go straight to today's workshop, okay? So so for today's workshop, we are going to focus on foreign exchange, the forward contracts on foreign exchange. So in the first part, we are going to talk about just the overall features of forward contracts. And for this topic, I really want you to understand the payoff functions of forward contracts. So you've got a long and a short position, and you need to understand when you would want to take a long and a short forward position, okay, on a certain currency. So this will be important later on as well when we talk about exchange rate risk management, okay? So you need to be able to apply these derivative contracts to hedge your exchange rate risk exposure, okay? Then we'll talk about the tutorial questions. And if we have time, then we can go back to revise the cross-rate arbitrage questions that we left off from last week, okay? So before we go through the workshop today, let's do some revision on exchange rate quotations, okay? So let me start my poll question. So last week we introduced the spot exchange rate market, and the main points was we want to look at how currencies are quoted, price, and how we can calculate the cross rate, right? As well as arbitrage. So let's see if we can do these questions. Okay, so the first question is, suppose I've got this current exchange rate, right? And I need to find a direct quote from this exchange rate. Can someone tell me what it is?
A?
Yes, did someone say something?
That's A?
Yeah,
No. So, let me wait a couple more seconds for people to finish, and then we can talk about the result. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I was looking at a different question.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So I have to stop the result. I have to stop the question and I'm going to share the result with you guys. So in this case, the direct quote from the US perspective is the value of the euro in the USD, right? So in the question, we're given the indirect quote, which is the value of the USD in the euro. Okay, so if we take the reciprocal of this rate, we are going to get the direct quote. Okay, so that will be answer A in your multiple choice question. Okay, well done, guys. See, sorry. Question 2. So in this question, we are asked to compute the cross rate, right? I'm sorry, we asked to compute the reciprocal rate. Okay. So for these kind of questions, because they are multiple choice questions, let's aim for about 2 to 2.5 minutes, okay, for each question.
Is it A?
No, it is actually C.
That's the previous question.
Yeah, so this is a new question now. So the correct answer here is going to be C, okay? So here we also got most people getting this question right. So the corresponding bid and ask rate would be the reciprocals of the previous rates, okay? Now, one thing to note is that the bid rate is always lower than the ask rate. So the correct order should be 23 and 67, okay? Okay, no, sorry. So in the next question, we are going to look at how to compute the cross rate, okay? So suppose we're given 2 exchange rates. Our job is to compute the cross rate, okay?
Is it A? 1.6.
Excuse me? I
Yes.
can't see the question.
it's still going on, so you can't see the results yet. So I'm still waiting for people to finish the calculation.
No question.
You can't see the question.
No.
It
How
must be
about the
some.
others?
I think, can anyone see the question that is in progress?
No, it's not shown.
Okay, that's
I
annoying.
did see a question. What was it? What was the euro to pound cross rate, right? That's the one we're working on?
Yeah. Can you still see it?
Once I select my answer, I can't see the question anymore. But I did see the question that you posted.
Yeah,
Oh, I
just at
see.
earlier we saw, but not anymore.
So once you click on the answer, you can't see it anymore, is it?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see. Right, so let me share the results with you. So can you see the question and the answers now?
Yeah, you see it both.
No,
Oh.
where can I see it?
Do you have two screens? Maybe it's on the other screen or something. All right, so if you have seen the question and if you can still see the result, then the correct answer here is answer A, okay? So if you, I'm going to post the answer in the chat box so that everyone can see. So here, if I apply a cross rate formula to compute my answer, then I'll find that £1 is equal to 1.6 euro. Okay, so which is answer A. All right, final question. I have just launched the question. So in this case, we're still dealing with a cross rate calculation. The only difference here is we changed the way the question is asked, okay? So it's still cross rate calculation. And in this case, we have the dollar, the euro, and the pound as before. So if you can't see the question, I'm just going to post it on the chat box, okay?
Yeah, that's better.
Let's take about 10 more seconds and then I'll share the results. So in this case, the same sort of calculation applies. I'm going to start with the cross rate formula. And then I'm going to apply the numbers. I'm going to substitute the numbers in the question into the formula. Okay. So the answer here is 1.25 euro per pound. Okay. So for these kind of questions, probably 1.5 to 2 minutes. Okay. So you shouldn't take too long on these questions.
All right, which was the answer? A, B, or C, D?
The
A?
answer is A, yes.
Yeah, correct.
All right, good guys. So if you're comfortable with these kind of calculations, I think you'll be okay with a large proportion of your first quiz, okay? So the first quiz is not too difficult. It's going to be just on exchange rate calculation, okay?
Hi, I have a question. Would you be able to explain a bit about no arbitrage cross-section?
No arbitrage cross, right? Did you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me start with the question before. So I suppose the question says find the no arbitrage cross rate, and they give us two exchange rates like this. Okay.
Yep.
So the no arbitrage cross rates is a rate at which you have no arbitrage opportunity at all. Okay.
Mhm.
That means if there is another bank that is trading the euro against the pound, they should be trading at this cross rate. Okay. Otherwise, if they quote a different rate than the cross rate, then there will be arbitrage opportunities. Okay. So for example, in this case, if so this is the cross rate that we computed before.
Yep.
So that was 1.25 euro per pound. Okay.
Yep.
So let's say CBA is quoting a rate of 1.30 euro per pound. Okay.
Mhm.
So this is when you're going to have an arbitrage profit where you buy through the cross rate and you sell the pound through CBA. Okay. Alternatively, if CBA quotes something lower than 0.25, let's say 0.20. So in this case, you will still have an arbitrage profit by buying here and selling here. Okay.
Yeah.
So anytime when a bank quotes something different from the cross rate that we compute, then this is when an arbitrage will occur. Okay. So as a result, the cross rate that we calculated is the no arbitrage cross rate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
I also had a question. With the US perspective and European perspective, do we usually always use the US perspective? Just in some questions, I've seen both.
Yeah, so most of the times I think we'll go with the US perspective because just because the questions are from a US textbook.
Okay, yeah. And can you just explain in the difference between a quote in US perspective and then European perspective, just the difference of those two, please?
So the US perspective. So from a US perspective, a direct quote is when you price another currency in the USD. Okay. So for example, I'm going to price the euro in the USD. Okay. And then you've got the indirect quote. So in this case, you're pricing your home currency in the foreign currency. So here you're pricing the USD in the foreign currency. Okay. I'm just making these numbers up.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah. So from the US perspective, the direct quote is when you price another currency in the USD. And the indirect quote is when you price the USD in the other currency. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions before we move on? If not,
No.
okay, thank you. Right, so for the first part of the lecture today, I'm just going to go through the main points of a forward contract, okay? So in the lecture recording, we talk about the forward market. We introduce the forward positions and payoffs, okay? So by positions, I mean long and short, and the payoffs are corresponding to the positions, okay? We also talk about forward rate quotations. Now, this could be a little bit confusing, so we're going to go through a few questions to illustrate how forward rates are quoted. It's a little bit different from the spot rate, okay? We also talk about forward premium and discount, and we discuss what why is it important. Okay. So just an overview of a forward contract, right? So with a forward contract, this is a derivatives contract. So this is an agreement to either buy or sell a foreign currency in the future, okay? So for a future delivery at a price that we agree upon today, okay? So with the spot market, we trade at the current time, yeah? So if you go to the bank today and you just want to buy or sell currencies, your transactions are basically done today, and it will be settled at the current exchange rate, okay? With a forward contract or a futures or an options contract, we are going to agree on the contract today, but for a future delivery, okay? So for example, let's say 6 months. So, and we agree on the price that we are going to settle the contract today, okay? So we know for sure how much we are going to exchange our currency for in a future time, okay? So if you sell, say if you enter into a forward contract to sell, then that is when you short, right? You short the currency forward. And if you enter into a contract to buy a currency, then you say you long a currency forward, okay? So if I long and if I short a currency forward, my payoff function will be a little bit different, okay? So for a long forward position, this is my payoff function, okay? Now, can someone explain to me why its payoff function is an upward sloping line for a long forward position?
Because you first buy it, so you're losing money, but then after you'll sell it and you'll gain money. That why
can you be more specific?
Why we lose a profit first and why we gain a profit later? Is that what your question is?
No, so this is not about my when I will lose and when I will gain.
Oh.
This is about how my profits would change when the spot exchange rate changes. Okay, so this is not time. This is the spot rate.
Oh, okay.
All right. Anyone else? Did anyone wants to tell me why my payoff function is an upward sloping line? So what this says is that my long forward position will gain if the future spot rate increases, okay, and vice versa. Budi, did you want to say something?
Yeah, the same thing. Other than the agreed price, if the spot rate increases or decreases, we have the inverse. This is the thing.
I'm sorry, I can't hear too well. I think there's some background noise or something. Can you repeat, please?
Yeah, the spot price compared to the forward rate we agreed on. And then if there is positive changes, we gain. And then if there is negative changes, we...
Yeah, so basically when the spot rate, the future spot rate is greater than your forward rate, then a long forward position will gain. And if the spot rate is lower than the forward rate, your long position will lose, okay? So to understand why this is the case, we need to understand what we do in the long contract, okay? So essentially when we enter into the long forward contract, let's say on the pounds, so what we agree on is we agree to buy the pound at a fixed rate, which is F, right? So you can think of this as, let's say, for example, 1.25 USD, okay? In the future, in time T, let's say this is 3 months time, okay? So now if I compare my long forward position with a with another trader that does not have a forward contract, right? So if I have a long position, then in 3 months time, I'm going to be buying the pounds at this rate, okay, at F. Now, in 3 months' time, a person with our forward contract is going to buy the pounds at the market rate, which is ST, okay? So as you can see, if the future exchange rate is, let's say, 1.3 USD per pound, is it better for me as a person with a long forward, or is it better for another person without a forward contract?
Forward contract.
You would want to have a forward contract, yes, spot on, because you get to buy at a cheaper rate, yeah? So as a result, when the future exchange rate is higher than the forward contract, you are actually better off relative to everyone else without a forward contract, okay? So as a result, your payoff function is positive when the future spot rate is greater than the forward rate, okay? In contrast, if the future spot exchange rate drops to $1 per pound, this is when it's a forward contract is worse off, okay? So this is when I'm going to lose by having a forward contract, because I buy the pounds at a more expensive rate, okay, relative to everyone else in the market. So as a result, when the future exchange rate is lower than the forward rate, the long forward contract is going to lose out, okay? So this is why a long forward position has an upward sloping payoff function, okay? So to measure the payoff function of a long forward position, the payoff function is going to be the difference between your forward contract and when you don't have a forward contract, right? And as we mentioned before, the difference is given by ST minus F, okay? So similarly for a short forward contract, now in this case, we agree to sell a currency forward, okay? So let's say we sell the pounds forward at F, which is the forward rate. Now let's say this is 1.45 USD, okay? For a future delivery, okay? So in time T. So using the same analysis that we did before, can someone explain to me why this payoff function looks like this? Okay, so why is it downward sloping? So here, if I have a forward contract to sell the pounds, okay, in the future at a fixed rate of 1.45. So let me write 1.45 here. And the exchange rate here is USD over the pounds. So if the market rate is 1.5, in this case, would I be happy if I have a short forward position?
No, we will be losing 0.05.
Exactly right. So we will not be happy because we'll be selling at this rate, whereas everyone else sell at this rate. Okay. So when the market rate is higher than F, then we are not very happy because we are going to lose out. In contrast, if the market is at 1.2,
in that case, there is a profit of 0.25.
Exactly right. So in this case, we make a profit. Yeah. So when the spot exchange rate is lower than the forward rate, I'm better off as a person with a short forward because I get to sell the pound at a higher rate, whereas the rest of the market is selling at a lower rate. Okay. So in this case, when the spot exchange rate is lower than the forward rate, I am going to be better off. Okay. So as a result, my payoff function looks like this. Okay. So when SD is greater than F, my payoff is going to be negative, and when SD is less than F, my payoff is going to be positive. Okay. All right. So are we okay with long and short forward and their payoff functions? Yep. Okay. So let me move on to the next slide. All right. So in terms of forward rate quotations, the first straightforward method is just like what we said, what we saw before last week. So you could have a forward quotation in the USD or per USD. Okay. Now, for each of the maturities, you would have a different quote, right? So suppose we observe for the British pounds, let's suppose we observe these rates, right? So this is the value of the pound if it is traded today. This is the value of the pound traded in the 1 month forward. And this is the value of the pound traded in 3 months, so on and so forth, right? So what we observe here is as time goes by, so when we have a longer maturity, the value of the pound is actually increasing, right? So what can we say about market's expectation about the future value of the pounds?
Pound is increasing.
Sorry, can you say that again?
The pound value is increasing, ma'am, when compared to US dollars.
It is increasing compared to the USD, right? So if you see that the forward rate is greater than the spot rate, then what it tells you is that the market is expecting the currency to appreciate in the future. Okay, so here the market is expecting the pound to appreciate against the USD in the future. Okay. All right. So as we mentioned before, the forward rate is important because it tells us what the market is expecting, right, about the future movement of the spot exchange rate. So, for example, if the current 6 month forward rate is 1.4416 USD per pound, that means the market is thinking that in 6 months' time, the value of a pound is 1.4416 USD. Okay. So formally, we can write the forward rate as equal to EST plus 1 IT. Okay. So what it says here is that the forward rate that you observe today is the conditional expectation of the future spot rate given the current information set of the investor. Okay. So the forward rate is basically just the investor's expectation about the future value of the spot rate given what they know today. Okay. All right, so in the next few slides, let's look at some examples of forward contracts, okay? So For example, if I say that I short £100 6 months forward at the market rate of £1 per £1 equals to 1.4416 USD. That means at today's time, right? I have agreed to sell £100 at a fixed rate of 1.4416, and I'm going to deliver the pounds. Sorry, I'm going to sell the pounds in 6 months' time. Okay. So this contract is going to hold regardless of how much the spot exchange rate is going to be in 6 months. Okay. So in the future, doesn't matter what the exchange rate is, I'm going to sell the pounds at 1.4416 regardless. Okay. So one thing to note as well, when you read the textbook, now a forward contract is normally settled with net settlement. That means people don't go and exchange £100 altogether. What they do is that they would just change hand the net profit or loss. Okay. So for example, in this case, I think I have an example in the next slide. So for example, suppose that we have the same contract as before. We short £100 for 6 months at the rate of 1.4416. Okay. Let's suppose in 6 months' time, the spot exchange rate becomes 1.3415. Okay. So in this case, how do I settle the contract? Okay. So because I have a short forward position here, if we recall from a previous slide, when I have a short position, this is how my payoff looks like. Okay. So here my payoff is equal to F minus ST. So when the future spot rate is lower than F, is lower than the forward rate, then a short position will make profits. Okay. So as a result, my payoff function is the notional amount, which is £100 times F minus ST. Okay. So in this case, under the short forward contract, I make a profit of 10.01 USD. Okay. So to settle this contract, instead of exchanging £100 with my counterparty, I'm just gonna get 10.01 USD paid into my account, right, from my counterparty. So only the net settlement is conducted, okay, rather than the full amount. Okay, so let's talk about forward rate quotations next. So with forward rate quotations, the first method is, of course, similar to what we saw before with the spot exchange market, where you can just have the outright forward quotations like this, okay? But in addition to that, with the forward rate quotations, you have a second method where you only quote the points, okay? So you only quote the points difference between the spot rate and the forward rate, okay? So what that means is that this is the difference between your 1 month forward bid rate and your spot bid rate, okay? Yes, did someone say something? Okay. So as a rule of thumb, if the left point number is less than the right number, then you want to add these points into the current spot rate to find the 1 month forward rate. Alternatively, if the left is greater than the right, then you want to subtract these points from the current spot rates, okay? So for example, in the first case, the left number is greater than the right number. So if you want to find the 1 month forward rate, you want to take the spot rate and you subtract these numbers from the spot exchange rates, okay? So for example, if you take point 9776 and you minus 12 basis points, the 12 basis points is 0.00112. Then you will get this number. Similarly, if I take 0.9779 and I minus 10 basis points, so 0.0010, I will get the ask rate for the 1 month forward. Okay. So if the left is less than the right, I don't have an example here, but if the left is less than the right, then you want to add these basis points back to your spot exchange rate. Okay. So it's just quotation, it's nothing too complex, I think. Okay, so in terms of the forward contracts, and we'll talk about this more in week 5 as well as week 7 and 8, okay? In terms of derivatives contract, you can either use them to hedge an underlying position, or you can use them to speculate, okay? So if you want to hedge with forward contracts, you've got to enter into a position where any losses of your underlying asset is going to be offset with the gains in your forward contract, okay? So for example, if we think about a person or a company that is going to pay foreign currency in the future, so if I owe foreign currency in the future, and if I want to hedge this position, do I want to go long or do I want to go short in the forward contract? Okay. Alternatively, if my company is going to receive payment in the foreign currency in the future, do I want to go long or short in forward contracts? Okay. So how do we think about this question?
I think it depends on the risk, how much it is. Like if it is like a smaller amount, we can go for a short, or maybe if it is like $100,000, for example, we can go for a long-term forward contracts, and that is what I think.
So I think this size is not exactly what we're looking for in this question, but you want to look for the positions, right? So you want to look for where your exposure is. Okay. So to answer this question,
in the first case we long.
In the first case, you long, and why is that the case?
In the certain future, we need to pay someone in the foreign currency, so we lock the price today, and then we buy in the forward day, and then pay the currency to the forward party, and in the second case we short.
Yeah, I agree.
In the second case, we receive foreign currency from someone, so we will be selling the foreign currency, and then
so you want to short in this case.
Yeah.
Spot on here. So what we want to do is, if we think about a person that is going to pay a liability in a foreign currency, right? Let's say in 1 year's time, I'm going to have to pay someone £100. Okay.
Yeah.
So to pay this money, in 1 year's time, I'm going to have to go to the exchange market and buy this £100. So I'm going to exchange how many Australian dollars into the pounds, right, in 1 year's time.
Yeah.
So as a result, to settle this liability, I'm going to need to buy this currency at a future time. Okay.
Yeah.
So here, what I want to do is I want to lock in a buy price. Okay. So spot on. So that's the correct answer. So I know that in a year's time, I'm going to have to exchange my domestic currency to that foreign currency. So why don't I just lock in a buy price today, right? To hedge any exchange rate uncertainty.
Yeah.
So as a result, if I have an account payable in a foreign currency in the future, I'm going to be entering into a long position, okay? So here I want to lock in a buy price, and so I want a long position. Similarly, if I think about receiving money from someone else in the future, so in this case, I've got an account receivable, okay? So if my trade partner is going to pay me £100 in 3 months, so when I receive that money, of course, I have to convert it back into the AUD so that I can use it. So in the future, when I receive this much, I'm going to be selling the pounds to buy my domestic currency, which is the AUD, okay?
Yeah.
So here I want to lock in a sell price. So if I want to do so, I would be entering into a short forward, okay? All right, so in the next slide, I'm going to show you an example to illustrate this position, okay? So for example, I am a US importer and I have just ordered something from the UK, okay? So because I'm importing, I'm buying something, I'm going to have to pay, okay? So this is my timeline. In 1 year's time, I'm going to have to pay £1 million, okay? So in this case, if I want to eliminate all exchange rate uncertainty, I'm going to think about fixing the cash flows in the dollars, okay? So I want to know how much I'm going to pay in terms of the dollars. So as we discussed before, one way to fix the cash flow is to put yourself in a position where you you deliver the £1 million in 1 year's time, okay? So in this case, I will be long a forward contract on a notional value of £1 million, okay, to hedge my exchange rate risk in this case. So suppose the forward rate is 1.25, okay. So for each pound, I'm going to fix the value of the pound at 1.25 USD, okay. So if I have entered into a long forward contract on the pound before, then essentially I'll be exchanging 1,025,000 USD for £1 million, okay? So essentially it costs you 1.25 million USD to settle your future account payable, okay? So this is contractually fixed because you have agreed on the rate that you will settle in a year's time, okay? Now, suppose in the future, if the future spot rate turns out to be 1.2, in this case, when you have to pay to your counterparty, if you settle the contract using the spot market, it will cost you 1.2 million USD, okay? Now, however, because you have entered into a long forward contract before, in this case, besides the transaction in the underlying asset, the transaction in the spot market, you would also have to settle your forward contract, okay? So if you have a long forward contract, your payoff function will be ST minus F. So in this case, because ST is lower than F, you're going to make a loss here, okay? So if I put in the calculation, I will find that this loss is $50,000, okay? So as a result, for a person with a long forward contract, their overall cost of settling this transaction will also be 1.25 million USD, okay, which is the sum of the underlying position and the forward position, okay. In contrast, if the spot rate is going to be higher in the future, now in this case, if you settle the contract, if you exchange 1 million pounds into the USD in the forward market, in the spot exchange rate market, it's going to cost you $1.3 million, okay? But because you have entered into a forward contract at the start, your forward contract is going to pay off. So in this case, with the forward contract that we entered into before, the payoff of the forward contract is going to be $50,000, okay? So that will offset the extra costs that you have to pay in the underlying market, which means that overall, your payoff function, your overall cost of this transaction is also 1.25 million USD, okay? So that means regardless of how, yep, it's someone wanted.
Can you please tell, so as for your perspective, which one should be, best fit for an investor in these three cases?
Hang on, let me just erase the slide so that I have enough space. So in this case, I've got two different scenarios in the future. So in scenario one, the exchange rate is actually lower. And in scenario two, the exchange rate is actually higher, okay? So what I'm saying here is under both conditions, if you fix your contract obligations using a forward contract, then in both cases, your transaction cost is going to be the same, which is 1.25 million USD. So if you think about whether this is good or bad for the company, it actually depends, right? So if I am a very risk-averse company and I don't want any exchange rate risk exposure at all, then this looks good to me because I know for sure how much I'm going to be paying in terms of the USD, okay? Alternatively, if I am not too risk averse and if I think that the future exchange rate is going to be low, then maybe I don't enter into the forward contract, okay? Does that make sense? So it's very hard to really say whether it's good or bad. It just depends on your risk appetite, okay? So if you don't want to bear any exchange rate risk, then maybe a forward contract is a good thing. So let me just draw a graph to make it a bit more clear. Okay, so in the previous example, this is our underlying position, right? Sorry. this is my underlying position. Okay. So in the future, if the exchange rate is going to increase, so if the exchange rate is going to increase, I'm going to pay more in the USD, okay, because I have an account payable. So this is the USD over the pound.
Sorry, I don't see where you're writing. Are you on a different page?
Let me try it again. Can you see it now, James?
Are you still on the forward market hedge example page?
Okay. What about here?
Oh yeah, I see the purple graph now. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So where was I? So here is my underlying position, right? Which is my 1 million pound account payable. So because it's an account payable for me, every time when the pound appreciates, I'm going to be worse off, okay? So as you can see, as the pound appreciates, my payoff is going to go lower. Now, this is my short, this is my long forward position. Excuse the drawing, doesn't look too good. So here what I did was I long 1 million pounds forward, okay? So as you can see, the two positions sort of offset each other so that whenever my underlying position is worse off, my forward position is going to make a gain, okay? And this gain is going to offset the loss in my underlying position. So if I have a combined position of both my account payable and my long forward, then the USD cost of settling this account payable is going to be a fixed line, a straight line, okay? So in this example, it's going to sit at 1.25 million USD, okay? So the reason why this is going to be fixed at 1.25 million USD is because we have basically locked in that exchange rate in our forward contract, okay? So every time when the underlying position makes a loss, it will be perfectly offset by a gain in our forward position and vice versa, okay? So when the underlying position makes a gain, the forward contract is going to make a loss, okay? So this is something that you have to think about if you work in risk management. So the question is how much risk you want to take, okay? The question is not too much about how much profits you want to make, because when you talk about hedging, you talk about risk management, okay? So if I don't want to bear any risk, I want to be on this flat line, okay? So I want to enter into a forward contract. Oopsie, where is my slide? All right, let's talk about speculation and then we can take a short break, okay? So as we were mentioning before, with the forward contracts, you can either hedge or you can speculate with forward contracts, okay? So the main difference between a speculation and a hedging strategy is that with hedging, you start with an underlying position and you try to offset exchange rate risk with that underlying position, okay? For a speculation, you start with 0 position, okay? So you don't have any account payable or account receivable in the foreign currency. But what you do have is that you have a strong belief about the currency movement in the future, okay? So for example, I think that in the next 2 months or so, the pound is going to appreciate against the Australian dollars, okay? So in this case, I could use a forward contract to earn profit from that belief, okay? So suppose I think that the pound is going to appreciate against the AUD. Do I want to take a long or do I want to take a short position in the pound, in the forward contract? Okay. So if I think that the future spot rate is going to increase for the pound, do I want to long or do I want to short a forward contract? On the pounds. So in this case, you want to go back to the payout function and you want to look for a position where you make a gain when the exchange rate increases, okay?
Long now?
You want to long spot on, right? So you want to, yeah? Did you say something?
Yeah.
So yeah, so you want to long because when you take a long position, you're here, okay? When you take a short position, you're here. So when you long and when the exchange rate increases, so you're moving to the right, okay? This is when you make a profit. In contrast, if you short and as the exchange rate increases, you're going to make a loss, okay? Expected profit. So the expected profit from your position will be the payoff of the forward contract, okay? So in this case, if I long, my expected profit is going to be this, okay? ST minus F. All right. So we have finished summarizing the lecture notes. And the key takeaway here is you want to understand the forward payoffs, okay? So one is here and one is here. And you want to understand the application of forward contract, okay? So if I want to hedge and depending on my position, do I take a long or do I take a short forward? Alternatively, if I want to speculate, then where do I want to be, right? Depending on the future exchange rates. Any questions so far with forward contracts?
No.
Okay. If not, let's take a short 5 minutes break and we will come back at 15 past, okay? So I'll see you guys back in 5 minutes. Okay, so for today's tutorial, we don't have too many problems or questions, and I think they are relatively easier than last week. So I think we can spend about an hour or so on the current tutorial questions. And if we do have time at the end, we can go back to the triangular arbitrage questions from last week, okay? Because I think that is a little bit complex and I want to go through that again with you guys. Okay, so this is the list of the questions for today, by the way. Okay, so let's go through the theory question first. Okay, So question 5 in the textbook, what is meant by a currency trading at a discount or a premium in the forward market? Okay. So can someone explain to me what does that mean by, what do we mean by a forward discount or a forward premium?
If the forward price is higher than the spot price, it's a premium. And then
Exactly, yes.
the opposite. So if the forward price is lower than the spot price, it's a discount.
Yeah, spot on. So to calculate the forward premium or discount, we use this formula. So basically, this is the annualized percentage of forward discount or premium, right? And as James said before, if the forward premium is greater than, I mean, if F is greater than 0, then this is a forward premium. And less than 0, then this is a discount, okay? So if we have a forward premium, what does it say about the future expectations? So let's say,
We think it's going to appreciate in the future.
Exactly, right? So the if F is greater than 0, then this is a forward premium. And this is when we think the commodity currency is going to appreciate, okay? And vice versa. All right, problem 4. So in this problem, we are given the outright quotations for the spot and the forward contracts, okay? And in this case, we have the, what's the currency here? I think this is the euro, isn't it? Anyway, so, so based on these rates, the question asks us to compute the forward points, okay? So in other words, if we recall from what we talked about at the start, we want to quote these forward rates in the point quotation, okay? So here I'm going to have the point. So to compute the forward points, we would take the difference between the forward rates and the relevant spot rate, okay? So for example, if I want to find the forward point for the 1 month forward rates, for the bid rate, I'm going to take 1.3432 minus the spot bid rate, which is 1.3431, okay? So in this case, the forward point is 1 basis point, or 0.0001. Okay, so 1 basis point is 1% of 1%. So to compute the ask forward point, I'm going to do something similar on the ask rate. So I'm going to take the ask forward rate, so 1.3442 minus 1.3436. Okay, so in this case it will be 6 basis points. Okay, so here I'm going to write 0.06. Okay, so if I do the same thing for the 3-month and the 6-month maturities, I'm going to find the forward points for these 2 maturities as well. Okay, so I'll give you guys about 1 or 2 minutes. And can you please help me compute the bid and ask forward points for each of these maturities? Okay.
Hey, Van, I just had a quick question. What was the go with how you said, what was it? If it's the left is greater than the right, you add, and if the right's, when you add and subtract, what did that have to do with? With forward point quotations?
Yeah, so when your forward rates are smaller than your spot rates, then the left point is normally greater than the right point.
So in this sense, everything's greater. So we're subtracting it all, correct? But if it was at a discount, we'd be adding it. Is that right?
No. So if so here it's a little bit different. So here you just want to find the difference, right? So the forward points are just the difference. Yeah.
I reckon if it's increasing, so we add it, and it's in decreasing, then we deduct it.
Yeah, yeah. So in this case, we have a case where the forward rates are greater.
Yeah. So I guess I say for 1 month, instead of 32, it was 30. So we wouldn't have a negative number, right? It would just, or would you?
So in that case, no, you don't normally have negative forward points. So if it's smaller, then you take the spot, you minus the forward rate.
Right. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. It's the spot minus spot. And so you'd still have a 1 point difference, correct?
Yeah. Correct.
So the answer 1 would still be the same, even if it's greater or lower?
Yeah. So you still have...
okay. It's just depending what you subtract first, the forward rate or the spot rate, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you. So we are at 22. So let me move on to my answer because I want to spend some time on the cross rate calculation. So anyway, so if we look at the answer here, I have computed the difference between the forward rates and the spot rate for each of the maturities, okay? And these are the corresponding forward points. So problem 5 is quite similar to problem 4. We're going to have the same quotation as before. And in this case, we are asked to compute the beta spreads, okay, in points. So this is once again just a subtraction sort of calculation. So in this case, So in this case, instead of subtracting vertically, you want to do a subtraction horizontally, okay? So you want to find the difference between the between the bid and the ask rate. So for example, if I want to compute the bid-ask spread for the 1 month forward contracts, what I do here is I take the ask rate, which is always greater than the bid rate, and I minus the bid rate, okay? So in this case, the ask rate is 10 points greater than the bid rate, okay? Similarly here for the 3 months maturity, I'm going to take 1.3463 minus 1.3448. Hang on, I've got a chat message. The ask rate for the 6 months is wrong. I'm sorry, I must have the ask rate for the 6 months. I think this is from the question, right? So 1.3508. The point quotation.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be 57 and 72.
Yeah, I got 72 as well.
Let me check again. So if I take, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so 3508 minus 3436. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me just double check. Yeah, correct. Sorry, guys. So this is 72. Okay, so going on, this will be just 1.3508 minus 1.3488. Okay. So what does the bid-ask spread tell you? So as a trader, do you want to see a greater bid-ask spread or do you want to see a smaller bid-ask spread? So suppose you trade currencies.
Smaller.
Smaller one, less risk.
Why is it less risk?
Well, it's less chance to, you know, fluctuate, I guess, higher or lower.
No, that's the transaction fee. That's the cost we have to pay.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Can you explain further, please? Sorry, I don't see your name here on the list. I can only see 5 people at a time. Did someone want to explain?
About the quotation fee?
Yep.
So that's the fee as a transaction fee we have to pay. So the less we pay, better off fee.
Exactly right. So the bid-ask spread is how much the dealer earns when they trade with us, right? So they buy low and they sell high. So for a trader, that is the transaction cost that we pay. So the lower, the better. So in finance, we tend to say when you have a lower bid-ask spread, that is when you have higher liquidity. Okay. Right, moving on to problem 6. So in this case, we're given the exchange rate between the USD and the yen, and we are asked to compute the forward discount or premium for these maturities. Okay. So if we recall from a previous slide, this is what we want to compute. Okay, so we want to compute F, which is the difference between the forward rate minus the spot rate divided by spot times 360 divided by T. Okay. So this is the annualized forward premium or discount. So in this case, you want to use the Japanese yen over the USD exchange rate for this calculation. So this is the column. Using American terms, quotation. Yeah, so American terms is here. Okay. So if we have done the calculation, if we use the American terms, then we're looking at the second column from the previous slide. So in this case, my spot rate is here. This is my 1 month forward. This is my 3 months forward. This is my 6 month forward. Okay. Now you have to be careful with the T here. So for 1 month, T will be 30 days. 3 months, 90 days, and 6 months, 180. Okay. Just gonna put a bracket here. So based on this calculation, we can see that the so these are all forward premiums, right? And the premium increases with the maturity of the contract. So what do we say about the value of the yen relative to the USD?
Oh, gonna go up?
It's going to go up.
Appreciate.
Yeah, exactly. So we according to the forward premium, the market expects the yen to appreciate. Okay. All right, so problem 12. Now in this problem, we are going to use the forward contract to speculate, okay? So here you've got information for the spot exchange rate. So this is the current spot exchange rate, and I'm gonna say as 0, okay, for the current spot. I've got a 3-month forward rate, which is $1.9 per pound. So based on my analysis on the exchange rate, I think that the future spot exchange rate is going to be 1.92. Okay, so this is my ST. Assume that we can trade 1 million pounds. Question 8, what actions do we need to take to speculate in the forward market, and what is the expected dollar profit? Okay. So to answer this question, you need to compare ST and F. Right. So F here is the future, is the market's expectation of the future, and this number here is your own expectation. Okay.
We long the forward and then short for 1.92.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to long the forward contract, yes. So you want to buy here.
Yeah.
So when we long forward, that means we buy the pounds at this rate. Okay.
Yeah.
So if the future turns out to be 1.22, then we will earn a profit. Okay. Because we buy low. So question A, my action will be to long the forward contract. Okay. And my expected profit is going to be the payoff function for the long contract. Okay, so that will be ST minus F. So if I have 1 million pounds to trade, what is the expected dollar profit?
20,000 pounds.
20,000 should be dollars, not pounds.
Oh, yeah, dollars.
So you take the notional amount, you times it with ST minus F.
Yeah.
So here it will be 1 million times
1.92 minus 1.
Yeah, so 1.92 minus 1.90. Okay. So because you times a power value with the dollar over power exchange rate, you're going to end up with a USD profit. Okay. Question B. Now suppose that your expectation turns out to be wrong and the market in the future is going to be 1.86. Okay. So in this case, what will happen?
Negative $40,000.
Exactly
Just-
right.
Yeah.
Yep. So in this case, this is lower than F. So you end up buying higher than the market. So you end up with a loss. Okay. So here it's going to be 1.86 minus 1.90. So that would be minus 40,000. Okay. So to put it on a graph, this is the first scenario, okay? So this is when your expectation turns out to be right and the market is going to be 1.92. So in this case, because you long a forward contract, when the market is at 1.92, it's actually good for you and you earn a profit, okay? So as we calculated before, this profit is 20,000. Okay. In the second case, when our expectation turns out to be wrong, then we're looking at this graph here. So we still have a long forward contract, so the straight line here. But in this case, we end up with a loss. Okay. Okay, final question for this week. Now, this is not too complex, but I think this question is a little bit confusing, and I'll tell you what it means later on. But I decided to put this question in the tutorial anyway, because this is a CFA question, okay? So if you think about doing CFA, then this could be helpful. So in this question, we have a fund manager, and what they want to do is they want to sell their equity portfolio in the Swiss franc, and they want to purchase the South African rands, okay? So essentially, you want to convert your Swiss franc holdings into the African rand, which is the ZAR. Suppose that your equity portfolio is 3 million Swiss franc. Now, the time horizon that you're looking at is in 30 days, okay? So these are the exchange rates that you observe. Now, because you don't have a direct exchange rate between the Swiss franc and the ZAR, you're going to have to look at the exchange rates between the ZAR and the USD and the franc and the USD. Okay. So here I've got 3 different contracts, 3 different rates. I've got the spot exchange rates, I've got the 30-day forward rates, and I've got the 90-day forward rates for each of these 2 exchange rates. So the question here is, number 1, describe the currency transaction that the company should undertake to eliminate currency risk over the next 30 days. Okay. So let's take a bit of time to read through the question and to answer the question, okay? So here is the case we've got, and we want to eliminate exchange rate risk, okay? If you have the question handy, I'm going to start the whiteboard so we can solve the questions on the whiteboard. Okay. Okay, so question 8. Discuss the currency transactions that this company should take if they want to eliminate risk. Okay. So essentially what this company wants to do is they want to sell their Swiss franc assets and they want to buy the ZAR, okay? So they want to convert from the Swiss franc to the ZAR, okay? So if I want to eliminate any exchange rate risk here, what should I do? Should I be selling the Swiss franc forward or should I be buying the Swiss franc forward?
You want to buy the Swiss franc future, and you want to, sell the. No, you want to sell the Swiss franc, and you want to buy the Zara or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called.
The South African money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sell the Swiss franc and buy the other one. Yep.
Exactly, spot on. So in the forward contract, you want to lock in a transaction where you can sell this the Swiss franc forward. Okay, essentially buying the ZAR forward. Okay, so here you want to sell the Swiss franc forward, or equivalently, that means you want to buy the ZAR forward. Okay, so with currency transactions, you always have two currencies. So if you sell one, that means you are buying the other one. Okay. Okay. So first question, well done guys. In the first question, this is basically you want to do, right? So you want to lock in a price where you can sell the Swiss franc forward, okay, in the ZAR. Let me see if I can copy question 4, question 2. Okay. We'll talk about this later on, but in the first question, we have identified that we wanted to sell the Swiss franc forward, okay, in exchange for the ZAR, or we want to buy the ZAR forward. Question B, calculate the following. Number 1, the value of the ZAR in the Swiss franc, okay, that the company will use to value the Swiss equity portfolio. Second, the current value of the Swiss equity portfolio in ZAR. And number 3, the annualized forward premium or discount, okay, at which the ZAR is trading versus this Swiss franc. Okay. So here, the currency exchange rate that we are looking at is the value of the ZAR in the Swiss franc. Okay. So this is the currency, this is the exchange rate that we want to find. Now, so I write the solutions for this question based on the CFA answer guide. So it could be a little bit ambiguous, right? But to answer the first question, we need to assume that the company has already hedged their currency risk, okay? So the value of the portfolio here is going to be the value as if we have already had a forward contract in place, okay? So here, in other words, you're going to be converting the Swiss value of the portfolio into the ZAR using the appropriate forward contract, okay? So you need to compute a 30-day forward cross rate. Okay, for the first part. So one thing to note as well when you do this calculation is, so the company here is a client, right? So as a client, they will always trade at the opposite rate of the bank, okay? So if you are looking at selling the Swiss franc, you are selling at the bank's bid rate. And if you're looking at buying the ZAR, you're buying at the bank's ask rate, okay? So that's something you have to take into account in your calculation too. So if I look at this exchange rate, I'm looking at the value of the ZAR, okay? So in the previous analysis in part A, we say that to hedge this exchange rate risk, we want to be buying the ZAR forward, okay? So in this case, you want to find an exchange rate that allow the fund manager to buy the ZAR forward in exchange for the Swiss franc, okay? So if I'm a client and I want to buy the ZAR, do I buy at the bank's ask rate or the bank's bid rate?
Bid rate.
No, I'm a client, okay? So I will need to trade at the opposite. Okay. So if I buy the ZAR, this is what I want to do to hedge the exchange rates, okay? So if I want to buy the ZAR forward, 30 days forward to be exact, I'm going to be buying at the bank's ask rate, okay? So here I'm looking at a forward ask rate, okay? So the applicable rate for this calculation is therefore the forward ask rate for the Swiss franc over ZAR exchange rate, okay? All right, so as we mentioned before, because we want to buy the ZAR forward, as a client, we will be buying at the bank's ask rate. So here I'm looking to hedge my currency exposure for the next 30 days. So I'm looking at the forward rate for the next 30 days, okay? This is my exchange rate. So from the two exchange rate quotes from the question, if I want to find this rate, I'm going to use a cross rate calculation, okay? So with forward cross rate is exactly the same as what we did before with the spot cross rate, okay? So on the left hand side, I've got the Swiss franc over the ZAR, and on the right hand side, I'm going to have Swiss franc over USD times USD over ZAR, okay? So our next step is therefore to look into the table in the question and find the appropriate numbers here. Okay. So the first one is given in the question. I'm just going back to the appropriate table. So here I want the ask rate for the forward contract 30 days for the Swiss franc and the USD. Okay, so I'm looking at the ask rate 30 days. So the rate I'm looking at is this one. Okay. Now the second one is the ask rate for the USD or ZAR, which is what I don't have in the question. I have the reciprocal. Okay. So if I want this rate, I will need to take the reciprocal, which is bit rate, okay, ZAR over USD. Okay, so here I want the bit rate for a 30-day forward for the ZAR over the USD. So I'm looking at bit rate, 30 days. So this is the number that I want. Okay. So putting these numbers in the formula. So this is 1.5285, and then this is the reciprocal of 6.2538. Okay. So this one is here, and this is so the reason why I think this question is a little bit ambiguous because it doesn't tell us whether we are calculating the exchange rate for the current exchange rate or we are calculating the forward rate. Okay, but I guess if you put it in the context, the fund manager has already hedged this exchange rate risk, then it kind of makes sense that we need to use the forward rate. Okay. All right, so step one is done. We have computed the applicable cross exchange rate, Swiss franc over ZAR, that we can use to value this with equity portfolio. Okay. Second question, the current value of the portfolio in ZAR. Okay. So here you've got a you have a 3 million portfolio denominated in the Swiss franc, and you want to convert it into ZAR. Okay. Now, once again, this is a little bit ambiguous because when you see the word current value, you thought you would use the current spot exchange rate, right? But actually the CFA solution is a little bit different. So let's assume that in this case, we have already hedged foreign exchange rate risk using the 30-day forward contracts that we talked about before. So using this exchange rate, using the forward exchange rate, can we compute the equivalent value of the portfolio in the ZAR? Okay. So the rate that we computed before was 0.2444.
Can you just multiply that by 3 million to get the currency in ZAR?
You want to multiply this number with 3 million? Not exactly, James. You want to?
Oh, divide.
Exactly, yeah. So you want to divide instead of multiplying, okay? because this is Swiss franc over ZAR. So, yep, so to find the equivalent value of this portfolio in the ZAR, assuming that we have already hedged, then we will take 3 million Swiss franc, we divide it by 0.2444, and we get 12 million. Well, actually, I've got the answer here. So that will be about 12,274,000. Okay. Question 3. So compute the annualized forward premium or discount at which the ZAR is trading versus the franc. Okay. So once again, you want to find, you want to use the Swiss franc over ZAR currency. Okay. So in this case, because we have computed the 30-day forward rate, then let's just compute the forward premium or discount for the 30-day horizon. Okay. So don't worry about the 60-day forward rate. So I'll give you a hint. We're going to start with the formula first. Okay. This is what we have computed before. So what we need is we need the spot rate. Okay. So while you're doing the calculation, I'm just going to get some water. Okay. I'll be back soon. Okay, so I'm just going to write down what we have. So here, this is my forward rate. So to be consistent with the forward rate, I'm going to use the ask spot rate, okay, for this calculation, because with the forward rate, we use the ask forward rate. So tell me what formula I should start with for this cross rate calculation. So on the right hand side, what do I have?
Be Swiss over USD times USD over ZAR.
Exactly right. So this is what I'm looking for. So going back to the previous table, what number I'm looking at. So I know I'm looking at the spot rates. So this is the row. So here I want the ask rate for the Swiss franc versus USD. And with the second term, I need to take the reciprocal. So that means I'm going to need the bid rate for the ZAR over USD. Okay. So just to be clear, so SA USD over ZAR is equal to 1 divided by SB ZAR over USD, which is here. So going back, so if I apply these numbers, I will find that the spot exchange rate is 0.2448. Okay. So notice that I use SA here because with the forward rate calculation that we did before, we computed an ask rate as well. Okay. So to be consistent, I'm going to use the ask spot rate too. So in this formula, we have computed the forward rate, we have computed the spot rate. T here will be 30, right? So this is 30 days. So if I put it in the calculation, I will find that this is a forward discount, okay? So it's about 2%. So in other words, the annualized forward discount is about 2% per annum for the ZAR versus the Swiss franc. Okay.
What does that mean, annualized forward premium?
So that means if the same thing happens over the year, then at the end of the year, the ZAR will be depreciating by 2%. So its value depreciates by 2%.
I actually wrote the digits a lot longer, and so I got a bit different percentage. Is there a general rule of how far out we write our digits down so we can get the same answer?
Yeah, so normally with exchange rates, you want to keep 4 decimal points. Yeah, thanks, James. Yeah, so with these calculations, you get different answers if you use different decimal points. But as a rule of thumb, we will keep 4 decimal points. Okay. All right. Any questions with anything else for this workshop? Or are you happy to move on to the cross rate calculation?
All good.
Thank you. Okay, so I thought today's workshop is going to be short, so I introduced the cross rate arbitrage problem at the end, so we can use to revise the cross rate arbitrage calculation. Okay. So in this arbitrage problem, we've got the same as before. The only difference here is I introduced the bid and ask spread. Okay. So we still have three different currency, different exchange rates. But instead of just having one rate, we are going to have the bid and the ask rate. Okay. So let's say this is from CBA, this is from NAB, and this is from ANZ. Okay. So suppose we observe these following quotes, and as a trader, we want to find an arbitrage opportunity. Okay. Suppose we also start with 1 million USD. The question is, how do we earn profit, okay, from these quotes? So for simplicity purposes, we are going to start with the AUD over franc cross rate, okay. So I think let's take about 5 minutes break. During this time, you can go back to your notes from last week and start thinking through the problem, okay? So when we come back in 5 minutes, we will talk about how to solve the problem, okay? Okay, guys, I'm going to start a whiteboard, okay? So if you haven't already, make sure you have the information with you because I'm going to start whiteboard. Okay. So in this question, let me go back to this slide first. In this question, we still deal with the same problem, which is the cross rate arbitrage. So the same principle would apply. So what you want to do is you want to find if a currency is underpriced or overpriced, okay, in the market. So for simplicity purposes, we are all going to start with the Australian over franc, okay. So here you want to compute the value of the franc in the AUD as implied by the first two exchange rates, okay? And then you want to compare that with the direct quote from ANZ, okay? So to identify whether the franc is traded into different prices, okay? So first step, let's compute the cross rates for the Australian dollar over franc, okay? So what I want to find is I want to find the cross rate. So CR for cross rate, AUD over franc, okay? As implied by these first two exchange rates. So because we're dealing with a bid and an ask rate, I need a bid and an ask rate here.
The bid is 1.13, if I'm not wrong.
1.13. Can you give me two more decimal places?
Just a second.
Sure. So yeah.
Is this for the ask or for the bid? Sorry.
What's the bid?
Oh, the bid. Oh.
You can give me the ask as well if you have
I got
calculated.
the ask is
It is 1.1399.
Hang on 1 second. Was that the bid or the ask?
It's the bid.
It's a bid. So 1.1399?
1399.
Yeah, exactly. And what was the ask?
The
There's
ask
1.1408.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on, guys. Did everyone else have the same answer? Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So we're all okay with cross rate calculations, yeah?
Yeah. Is one of them 14.02 or 0.08? I know it's small, but I got 0.2.
I've got 0.8. Yeah, I'll show you the correct answer in the next slide.
Yep.
Okay. But spot on, guys. So these are the bid and ask cross rates for the Australian over franc exchange rates. Okay. So the correct answer with all the steps are here. So with the bid rate, these are the two numbers that I used to compute the bid rate. And with the ask rate, these are the two numbers. Okay. So 0.822 divided by 1.5971.
Got the same answer as James, that 1.1402.
Did you get the same two numbers yet?
No, that's divided by 5979, not 71.
Yeah, I got the same, divided by 7.9, not 7.1.
So here, this is the ask. So you want to start with the ask rate here.
No,
And
I
you
think
want
he's drawing in the table.
in the table.
Then
Let me go back to the table. So here are the information.
79 here over that 71. The last digit.
That's 1. 7,
Yeah.
1.
That should be, there shouldn't be a 9, it should be a 1, correct?
That's for ask, not for B. We are calculating ask.
Yeah, but I'm taking the reciprocal. So so these are the ask and the bid for the franc over USD. And if you go back here, with this calculation, when I take the reciprocal, it will be SB franc over USD.
Okay.
For the B. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know it's confusing. Anyway, so that is our final answer. So this is bid and this is ask. Yeah, so be careful when you take the reciprocal. Okay, so given that we have computed the cross rate for the Australian over franc, and this is what we observe from the market, okay? So this is from the third bank. Now, as a trader, do you think there is an arbitrage opportunity? Is there a chance we can buy low and sell high in the franc?
Yeah. Yes.
And what do you want to do?
This is why I get a bit confused. I know you have to use all three currencies to get arbitrage, but I get confused what currency you first go into. And I know it makes a difference. You do it one way, you might lose money in the other way, but sometimes I get confused which currency you start with. So it'd be great to kind of know how that works.
Yeah, good question. So you want to buy low and sell high in the same asset. And the asset that we're talking about here is the commodity currency in this exchange rate. So that's because these are the prices of that currency in the measurement currency, right? So here you're talking about buying and selling the denominator currency. So that's where you start with.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. So in principle, you want to buy low and you want to sell high. And the asset that you're talking about is the commodity currency in this exchange rate, okay? So if we are looking at the AUD over the franc, then the currency that you want to start with is the denominator currency, which is the commodity currency.
Can you please repeat that again?
Yeah, sure. So the principle of an arbitrage strategy is you want to buy low and you want to sell high, the same identical asset, okay? And the asset that we are talking about here in an arbitrage, in a triangular arbitrage, is this denominator currency here, okay? That's because these numbers here, they are the prices of this currency in this currency, okay? So these are the prices of the franc in the Australian dollars. So as a result, when you identify your arbitrage strategy, you want to start with this currency, okay?
So in that case, which is the correct price to buy at? It's
You need to tell me.
1.1399, right?
You need to tell me.
Yeah, buy at 1.1399 and sell at 1.1458.
No, you can't because you have to trade the opposite to the banks, okay? So you were buying at the bank bid rate, which is not possible. So for a trader, can they buy low and can they sell high? So here, I'm a trader, okay? So I want to buy low and I want to sell high.
Yes, so you will buy from the cross rate 1.1408 and sell it
Exactly.
at the market rate 1.1450.
Exactly, spot on. So as a trader, I need to buy here because I can't buy from here, right? I can't buy from the left-hand side. Gotta buy from the right-hand side. So if I buy here, 1.1408, and if I sell here, I will still earn a profit, okay? So because my sell price is still higher than the buy price. So here I want to buy at 1.1408 AUD per franc. And I want to sell at 1.1450 AUD per franc. Okay.
So general terms, does it mean that we always buy from the right and sell from the left price?
Exactly. So if you're a trader, you will do that. Yeah. So you trade, you buy from the right and you sell from the left. Okay, guys. So this is the hardest step in this question, identifying what rate you want to buy and what rate you want to sell. Okay. So if I sell the currency, if I sell the franc for the AUD at this rate, it's a very simple thing to do because I just have to go to the market, right? And I trade directly the franc and the AUD. Now with the buy transaction, it's a little bit more complex because this is cross rate. So essentially with this transaction, I want to buy the franc, and that means I'm selling the AUD, right? So can someone tell me if I want to conduct this transaction, what would be the two small transactions? Well, I need to trade this indirectly through the USD, right? So as we said before, with the sell transaction, it's quite easy. We just trade through bank 3. With the buy transaction, because we have to trade indirectly through bank 1 and bank 2, this is what we need to do. Okay. So what we want is we want to buy the franc using the AUD. Okay. So if we trade it through the USD, then in the first transaction, we'll be buying the franc using the USD from the first bank. Okay, so from the first quote, which is quoting this rate. Okay. In the third transaction, we need to sell the AUD for the USD. Okay. So the bank that is trading the AUD and the USD is bank 2. Okay. Does it make sense, guys?
No, that's the hardest part.
Yeah. Okay.
And why we should consider 3 banks.
That's because, so basically this is what we want to do. Okay. Are you okay with me erasing all these notes? Okay. So this rate is a cross rate. That means this is not something you can trade directly in the market. Okay. So
Right.
this is an indirect transaction. So the reason why we say it's indirect is because this is the rate that is implied from the 2 other exchange rates. Okay. So this is implied from this exchange rate and this exchange rate. Okay. So as you can see, the first 2 banks, they don't really trade the franc for the AUD. Okay. So if you want to trade a franc for the AUD from the first 2 banks and get the cross rate, you have to trade through the USD. Does that make sense? So essentially what you want to do is you want to buy the franc. So you want to sell the AUD to buy the franc. Okay. That is essentially what you wanted to do in the first step. Okay. Now, because you can't trade the franc and the AUD directly from the first 2 banks, you're going to have to trade it through the USD. Okay. So what you will need to do here is, instead of having just 1 transaction like this, I'm going to break it into 2. So firstly, I'm going to sell the AUD to buy the USD. Okay. So once I obtain the USD from this step, I'm going to conduct a second transaction, which is to sell the USD to acquire the franc. Okay. So effectively, because these 2 cancel each other out, essentially what I'm doing is I'm still selling the AUD to buy the franc. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, I know it's a bit confusing. So you've got to practice a few times to understand it. Okay. Okay. So as we mentioned before, so here you want to be selling the AUD for the franc. Okay. And because you can't trade AUD directly for franc with the first 2 banks, given that they don't have that exchange rate, you're going to have to trade through the USD. Okay. So here you sell the AUD to buy the USD. And then whatever you obtain from this step, you're going to sell this USD to buy the franc. Okay. Now, so once we have identified the correct transactions, the next step is we want to apply the correct numbers into our calculation. Okay. So one thing to note with the bid-ask spread is that when you have the bid-ask spread, you need to be careful about your buy price and your sell price. Okay. So as a client, as a trader, you would always trade at the opposite side of the bank. Okay. So you buy at the ask and you sell at the bid. All right, so suppose that we are okay with step 3. Let's move on to step 4. Okay. So in this step, what you want to do is, depending on the starting currency. So in this case, we start with the USD. Okay. So depending on the starting point, you want to rearrange the transactions to make sure that you start with a USD transaction. Okay. So if we start with 1 million USD, the first thing we want to do is we want to use that USD to buy another currency. Okay. So if I go back to the list of transactions I need to conduct, so the one that involves using the USD to buy another currency is transaction 2 here. Okay. The other 2 transactions either don't involve the USD or involves buying the USD. Okay, so that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a transaction where I can sell the USD. Okay, so that will be the second one. So in the second transaction, we use the USD to buy the franc. Okay, so looking at the 3 exchange rates in the question, the first exchange rate is the one between the franc and the USD. Okay. So because the denominator currency is the USD, so here I'm looking at the price of 1 USD in the franc. Okay. So if I'm selling the USD as a client to the bank, then I'll be selling at the bank's bid rate. Okay. So here I'm selling the USD to bank 1, and because I'm a client, I'm looking at the bid rate. Okay. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yep.
So in the first transaction, I have basically sold my USD and I have acquired the franc. Okay. So after the first transaction, I've got some franc to sell. So as a result, in my second transaction, I will be selling the franc, okay, to buy another currency. So because we've got 3 different currencies, in my second transaction, when I sell the franc, I'm going to be buying the AUD. Okay, does it make sense? 3 currencies. We have traded the USD into the franc. So in the second transaction, we want to trade the franc into the AUD. Okay. Now, looking back at the 3 exchange rates we have in the question. Okay. So the bank that trades the AUD for the franc is Bank 3. Okay. And the rate that we have here is the value of the franc in the AUD. Okay. So in this transaction, essentially I'm selling the franc for the AUD. So as a client, if I sell to the bank, I'm selling at the bid rate, okay, which is 1.1450. So from here, I'm going to convert it into the AUD at this exchange rate. Okay. So from step 2, we have basically sold whatever franc we had from step 1 to acquire the AUD. Okay. So after this second step, we have some 1.8 million AUD to trade. So what we want to do now is we want to trade the AUD back into the USD to close the loop. So here in transaction 3, therefore, I want to be selling the AUD and I want to be acquiring the USD. Okay. So going back to the exchange rates in the question, the only one that is left is the second one. Okay. So AUD over USD. So this is the price of the USD in the AUD. So in this transaction, because I am buying the USD, I'll be buying at the bank's ask rate, okay, which is on the right-hand side. So if I'm converting this much AUD into the USD at this rate, this is how much USD I'm going to get, okay. So overall, the profit is the difference between my final outcome and the starting point, which is 1 million, okay? So the profit is about 4,700 USD, okay? So in an arbitrage, in a triangular arbitrage problem, you should have 3 transactions. So the first one is the one that the question asks you to start with. And then the second one is here. And then in the last one, you should close the loop by converting back into that starting currency. Okay. Any questions so far? Is it clearer the second time around? Or is it still a little bit confusing?
I reckon it's need a revision.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting there, but like she said, a revision or more practice would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll upload a few more practice for you then. So if you go to the practice midterm, you will see this question there. Okay.
All right.
So I guess, yeah, so the main struggling point is, as you said, I'm sorry, I can't see your name, but the lady who raised this point.
Nagus.
Nagus?
Yeah.
Okay. So the main point, as you mentioned before, is to understand the cross rate, okay, and trading through the cross rate.
All right.
So, so one thing you need to understand here is this cross rate is something that you can't trade in the market.
Because it doesn't exist in the bank code.
Yeah, because it's not explicit. It's not explicitly quoted in the bank. Yeah. So to obtain or to trade at this cross rate, you are going to need to trade through a third currency. Okay. So I think this is where it's a bit complex. Okay. So if you think about trading currency, it's always cash inflow in one currency and cash outflow in another currency. Okay. So for example, in this question, what we wanted to do was, so we want to obtain from this cross rate, we want to obtain the franc at this rate. Okay. So you want to buy the franc at 1.1 1408 Australian dollars. Okay. So this is what you want to do. So if you introduce another currency in this equation, then this is how it looks like. Okay. So with the franc and the USD, you want to be buying the franc by selling the USD. And then with the second transaction, because you want to be selling the AUD here, you need to be buying the USD, okay, at the same time. So in other words, this transaction, buying the franc using the AUD, is equivalent to buying the franc using the USD and selling the AUD using the USD. Okay. It's a bit complex, but yeah, I think if you practice a few times, it should be okay. Do we have any problem going from step 3 to step 4? So as long as you can identify the correct transactions, you'll be okay, right? It's just about how to understand these two transactions, yeah?
I think that's why I struggle with identifying the transactions. Because like you said, once you have them in front of you, it's kind of easy to pick which one goes where. It's just identifying these transactions and how they kind of work. I get confused with.
Is it better to start with this diagram? So I've got these 3. So in this question, the sale transaction is quite straightforward, right? So let's say if I sell, so if I use this diagram, the first transaction is to sell the franc for the AUD. So from the franc, I'm going to trade it for the AUD. Okay. So I'm just going to follow the arrows here. So knowing that the first transaction is this way, then my second transaction is going to be this way. And then the last one is going to be this way. Would that be easier?
Oh, you're starting with Swiss francs now, not USD? Or I'm a bit confused why we're starting with Swiss francs when we was talking about USD.
Oh, that's because I just want to, so from step 2, I just want to go from step 2 to step 3.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So the issue was because we don't know whether we want to be buying the franc or...
Right. So you just follow that order.
Yeah. So maybe it's easier to start with the more direct transaction, which is to sell the franc for the AUD to Bank 3. And then you work from there.
Okay.
Okay. So the direction should be the same. Doesn't matter which currency you start from. So once you get the order correct, then it should be okay. Yeah.
So the order is always going to be sell, buy, sell, right? Or buy, sell, buy?
Oh, okay. Well, no, it depends on which currency I'm talking about. Okay. So don't just memorize what starts first.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think this will be easier. So here I'm starting with the direct transaction with Bank 3, where I sell the franc for the AUD. And then if I do so here, then the other 2 transactions will follow. Okay. So here I'm writing Bank 3 here. Then for Bank 2, because they are trading AUD and USD, I'm writing Bank 2 here. And finally Bank 1. Does that make more sense, guys? Maybe try at home with whichever method that is easier, and see if you can solve the problem. Okay. Negus, so you asked this question before. Does this make more sense to you now?
Well, so if we want to buy franc with AUD, so that's direct. So what are these two extra transactions then?
So this is what we need to do. So you want to be buying here and you want to be selling here. Okay. So here I want to be selling the franc, and here I want to be buying the franc. Okay.
All right.
So what I did before was I started with a transaction where I sell the franc, okay, for the AUD. So instead of going through step 3 like what I did before with the direct and indirect transaction, maybe it's easier to start with selling the franc here for the AUD. Now, if the first transaction is going like this, then the second one is going from the AUD to the USD, and the last one is going from the USD to the franc. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So maybe try with a different question and see if you start with this method, whether you get the same transactions.
All right, I will.
Okay. Yeah, I think it takes practice. So I just have to practice a few more times. Okay, so I think that is about it that I wanted to discuss with you today. So I know that it's a little bit hard to get your head around with the cross rate arbitrage. So I'll upload a few more problems on LMS, and you can use them to revise. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. But make sure that you do get on top of the problem for the midterm. Okay. Okay. Any more questions?
Actually, I just had a quick question on last week's tutorial solutions, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's on question 9. The solution given, I'm a bit confused. I think they have it swapped around, but maybe I have it swapped around. So
let me open the solution first.
So last week, question 9.
3, question 9. Okay.
So, sorry, my question is, it's basically, they say the last sentence is, thus the New Zealand over the, what is it, that the Singapore
dollars, yeah.
spread is 8436 to 8452. I actually have that as the Singapore over the New Zealand. I have it the other way around. And then the same for the other one. I was just curious if they had it back to front, or do I have it back to front?
Let me compute that first. Let me double check the answer.
Yeah.
Maybe it's also good to send me your workings, James, if you don't mind, so I can correct on your workings.
All right, so it'd be better just to email you about this.
Yeah.
Because then also for question 8, the one right before it, it's weird. It says it asks for the Aussie dollar over the Swiss franc, but then in the question, in the answer, it actually solves it for the other way around. So I was just wanting to confirm that my answer is correct, because they don't actually give the answer in question 8.
Yeah, so send me your workings too. I can check that too.
Okay. Yeah, I just found some of the answers, the solutions wasn't matching up, and I was curious where I was going wrong with it.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Okay.
send me the workings. I'll check it.
Okay, will do. Thanks.
Okay, any more questions? So yeah, as I mentioned to James before, if you think your answer doesn't match with these solutions, feel free to send me your workings through email and I'll check your answers, okay? Or if you want, you can talk through, maybe book an appointment or something, whatever works for you. Okay, if there's no more questions, then I will conclude the class and I'll see you guys next week, okay? So remember, we have a quiz this Friday from 5:30, okay? If there's no more question, then I'll see you next week.
Bye.
See you. Thank you. Thanks, Van.
Bye.